Now, a couple days ago, the first fiscal quarter of 2019 came to an end for Disney, and in an earnings call, their CEO, Bob Iger, said something rather curious, that being that he felt they had a good relationship with EA and were seemingly fine with their handling of the Star Wars license. And as to not take this totally out of context, at the time of saying this, Iger was basically talking about Disney's troubles and past failures to self-publish in this department, or basically he was admitting they don't make good video games in-house, if you will, and would rather license out their franchises to those who are better at it, which then allows Disney to allocate resources elsewhere, which basically means there's much less risk letting someone else make games, and if they fail, so be it, and if they succeed, there's a bit more money in the bank for them. Anyway, after hearing this, I decided to put up a poll and ask all of you how you feel about EA's handling of the Star Wars license thus far, and surprise, surprise, fans had a rather different take on things. In fact, 55% of the 20,000 people who voted feel it's an absolute abomination, that EA couldn't do any worse with the license if they tried to, assuming they're not trying to, I suppose. Another 31% said it was bad but could be worse, though Landon Hagen here in his comment asks just how that's even possible when things have been so terrible. Then there's 11% of people who say it's been average or don't really have a strong opinion, which leaves 4% of people who share Bob Iger's optimistic appraisal of the situation and say it's been good or better, with only 1% of the total feeling it's been handled fantastically. Though our top-rated comment from the poll, which came to us from The Amazing Fat Boy, asks if perhaps there are some EA employees in the crowd who took part in the poll, and he certainly wasn't alone in wondering if there was something up with those who gave EA big praise here. And if somehow someone from EA is out there watching this video right now, let me just say hello there. And on behalf of myself and fellow fans, we'd like more and better Star Wars games, please. And if you do this, I guarantee you'll make a ton of money. Which brings us to a comment from No One Special who said, 2 games in 8 years, neither of which lived up to the potential. Canceling anything that looks like it might be interesting because they cannot find a way to monetize it as effectively as they would like. EA needs to lose the license. Sadly, Disney agrees with their decisions, which is why the Star Wars franchise is in such an abysmal state. And I absolutely agree that the biggest problem in the gaming industry right now, on the whole, is it's not about making great games that stand on their own and sell, and hence make money, just because they're great games. It's about how much money can they make by doing the bare minimum. Hell, they've got the same attitude I had when I was a teenager and got my first job so that, ironically enough, I could afford to buy video games. Which was, how little can I get away with doing before I get fired? Or in their case, how little can we give our customers before they just stop buying our products? But what's even worse is they want to nickel and dime you to death with microtransactions. They want to charge you for something that should have been in the game from the start, or that everyone should have an equal chance of earning through playing the game. Which brings us to Daryl Prototype's comment who said, with no good story mode and all the microtransactions, they've dishonored what the original Battlefront game had. Passion. Then there's this comment from FN Good Music 78. Just look at how much better Battlefront 2 from 2005 is than the new one. They completely messed up the story, being that the whole point of Battlefront is to play as a random foot soldier, not the top elite of the Empire. No galactic conquest and crap mechanics. On top of that, all the games that people actually want to play and spend money on keep getting scrapped. Open world Star Wars game, scrapped. 1313, scrapped. Battlefront 1 and 2 remakes that are way worse than the originals, made. LucasArts needs to return. And I don't recall exactly who said it or when, but someone at EA basically said no one's interested in playing single-player games anymore. That's why they've shifted focus away from them. And let me quickly translate what that actually means. You can't make as much money on single-player games because you're not pitting people against each other, which then exploits that drive to win at all costs, quite literally, because you desperately want to be better than that other person or persons you're playing against who are mocking you for sucking at the game. So you dig into your wallet in the hopes of now beating them. And when you do, you then become that player that someone else wants to beat and encourage them to dig into their wallets to now compete with you. The point of most games these days is not to be an enjoyable and rewarding experience, but to try and mask the fact that they're frustrating yet addicting. To again make games that exploit the overly competitive nature and desire, usually of younger guys, to win. And look, coming from someone who could never beat the original Castlevania game as a kid because no matter how many times I tried, I couldn't get past the Grim Reaper. It's okay for games to be difficult and frustrating at times. I'm not saying everything should be easy, or what's the point of playing? What's the point of playing if you get zero sense of accomplishment out of it? Many years later, when I went back and played Castlevania again, I finally beat the Grim Reaper, and I ran around my home cheering like I just won the Super Bowl or something. Anyway, what I'm saying here is there's a problem when the solution isn't trying to get better at the game, or to, I don't know, maybe earn a new piece of gear or whatever it might be so you can compete, but to instead just buy the win. I mean, not to get too deep into it, but pay-to-win games send the way wrong message to kids on so many levels. And all I have to do to begin to explain why is to quote Yoda, who said, "The path to the dark side is the quick and easy one." And yet, that's all these big companies want to produce these days, because it's not about making great games for their customers, it's about mentally manipulating them to make as much money from them as possible. And to be blunt, it's disgusting that Disney, of all companies, would give the stamp of approval to a company like EA, who may very well be the worst of the bunch. Okay, let's now move on to a comment from Noriel Gamer, who said, "The games they've made are certainly good, but they've hardly made anything pleasing for long-time Star Wars fans. I mean, come on, when's the next KOTOR? Where are the tanks and speeders in Battlefront? Thus far, I'd say they've hardly done anything impressive with Star Wars." And next, there's this comment from Nick Rhodes, who said, "While I do enjoy Battlefront 2 and had a lot of fun playing Battlefront, they are both really the bare minimum. Every Star Wars game that has looked like it might actually be pretty great got cancelled, and they haven't made any RPG games, which is honestly what everyone wants. I really hate the fact that EA has the license and owns BioWare, yet still hasn't given us a Star Wars RPG." And going back to what I said about EA claiming no one wants single-player story-driven games anymore. I mean, it's not like there are countless older Star Wars fans out there who primarily grew up with single-player games who would eat something like a new Star Wars open-world RPG up. I mean, I'm sure no one watching this video now would want to play something like KOTOR today. After all, the first two have aged so poorly, and no one, certainly not myself, still enjoys playing them today. So why would any gamer or Star Wars fan want something like that today? Why would anyone want another Knights of the Old Republic? Something, thanks to advancements in technology, could look and play absolutely incredibly and be the most immersive Star Wars experience ever. And yes, I'm of course being very sarcastic, because that's exactly what people want, EA. Moving on then, there were certainly plenty of people who did have some good things to say about the Battlefront games themselves, like the fact that they do look and sound like Star Wars, and that they can be fun to play, and if it wasn't for loot boxes and the fact that they were light on content when released, they'd probably be viewed in a much better light right now. And I'll pretty much agree, they are both beautiful games, and I'll admit, I had a lot of fun playing the first Battlefront game from 2015, though do keep in mind I'm not normally a huge fan of first-person shooters, so I'm not a great judge of them. Last time I really got into one before the new Battlefront a few years ago was the original Battlefront 2, and if I was going to play any Battlefront game right now this second, I'd go back to the original Battlefront 2 game. Though in all fairness, I just never got into the new Battlefront 2. I played the story mode in an afternoon and didn't really stick around for the multiplayer. So again, I can't personally judge it. I can only go off what I've heard others say about it. And many seem to say it's become a much better game in the past year and a few months since it was released. But if it takes that long for a game to be considered really good, it probably shouldn't have been released when it was. Call me crazy, but I think a game should be complete and have plenty of content right out of the box, not have an IOU note inside. Next, let's get to a comment from Coley Jennings, who said, "Star Wars is literally one of the best franchises for video games. I honestly didn't care what they did. I just wanted one mostly solo, massive RPG Star Wars game with some online elements where you had the choice to be a Jedi or a bounty hunter or anything. But after they screwed Battlefront up, and I knew it was only going downhill afterwards, to the point I'm not even excited for Jedi Fallen Order. I'm skeptical, and that breaks my heart as a Star Wars fan, especially when we've been blessed with some of the best games ever from a movie franchise." And yes, sadly, Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order makes me nervous too, since it's supposedly been in development for some time now, releases this fall, according to EA, and yet we've seen not one single screenshot, much less gotten a teaser trailer of some kind, and have almost next to no information about it, other than we'll be playing as a Jedi who survived Order 66, which is such an original concept. And yeah, that was more sarcasm. Seriously though, it doesn't inspire confidence that we're actually going to get a completed and good game at launch when we know almost nothing about it and we're, maybe 8 or 9 months away from launch? And yes, they've said they'll be giving us more details really soon, but again, why didn't they have more details to give us before, unless there wasn't much to tell, which there should be if it's been in development for as long as they say. And what I think this all boils down to, and a lot of people touched on this in their comments, is corporate greed has now utterly engulfed the video game industry. Thanks in large part to mobile gaming, there are more people than ever playing games, and they're playing more often than ever, which means there is a lot of money to be made. And from their perspective, the idea of spending years upon years and millions of dollars on one game that may or may not be a hit does not have the same appeal as making something on the smaller scale that can essentially be created as you go, and where you can insert microtransactions that will continually funnel money into your pocket. And as I mentioned earlier, play off the desires to win or be better than the next guy. And you can always just keep adding new stuff for people to go after and keep spending their money on. It's the proverbial carrot on a stick. You're constantly being lured and baited into spending more and more money, but since it's only a couple bucks here and there, or just another small step forward towards that carrot, you don't realize how much you've spent in total until it's too late. You've become the frog in the pot of water, the one who gets boiled alive, because the water was warmed up ever so gradually, and you didn't jump out before realizing something might be wrong here, and you've spent way more on the game than you ever would have dreamed of spending on it up front. In closing here, I'm just going to read this comment from Jack5590, who would get my vote for new CEO of EA, and he said, "Some things just sell themselves. A remastered Knights of the Old Republic 1 and 2, a third Knights of the Old Republic to close the series, an immersive Jedi and Sith open world, a remade X-Wing and TIE Fighter fight combat sim, an MMORPG role-playing in the Star Wars galaxy, about a dozen mobile games ranging from card trading to turn-based battles you could link to others nearby or over the world. Any Star Wars fan has a wish list in their head right now that could see investment turn into major profit. Some say EA is greedy, but I don't. They're just stupid. They would pay nothing for the licenses for any of these since they already own them. Their programmers and game design teams don't lack talent, and they already pay them. This costs next to nothing for them, only time, which they have wasted. They lack only corporate leadership with any vision or love of games. I know most fans feel the same that I do. I've seen it for years. I just wish I could do something more than just post this." Well, that's all I've got for this time. I think going forward with this channel, I'll be doing even more polls and trying to really give a voice to the Star Wars fandom on a large range of topics. Not saying I won't be doing all my other types of videos as well, but I really would like to do more of this. Anyway, what do you think about EA, the video game industry in general, or what I or anyone else had to say here in this video? Whatever it might be, leave a comment below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.